we've been doing, and we'll share some of that going forward. It's been pretty incredible over the last several months. I want to thank everybody very much for joining. If you have joined these before, if you have not, please go ahead and join us on these because they're fantastic. We'll talk a little bit about the upcoming resources. Just as way of introduction, I'll be moderating today. My name is Andy Lombard. I'm the Executive Vice President for Innovation, Venture Development, and Small Business for the Arizona Commerce Authority. We have many, many programs supporting our tech ecosystem and our small businesses. So stay tuned for a lot of that. Before we get started, I really want to just reach out and especially for this group, thank all of the partners that have made this session possible. Our Arizona Restaurant Association, the Maricopa County, the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, and the City of Mesa. This is just such a great and special group that has put together this information for you today. So my hat's off again and thank you for our partners. With regards to partners, we've been blessed. It has been so phenomenal. We have 95 partners that have come together throughout the state of Arizona to help support these small business boot camps. So again, thank you so much to everyone for that. It's been fantastic, and we're going to continue to do this. It's been one of those things we started for COVID, but we feel that it's been a tremendous amount of resource and impact for the team and for the state. So we're going to continue to do that. If you're not familiar with it, we run 1-hour sessions, generally twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But we do have time and space for special sessions like this that address restaurants and how to move your space outside and what the permitting process and what that would look like. We will also be having many PPP and CARES Act presentations coming up as well as that information comes out. Those are usually on Mondays and Wednesdays, so we'll continue to do that as well. Thank you. The Resource Collective portion of the Small Business Bootcamp is an online resource. Please go and visit it on the Arizona Commerce Authority site. It's just an incredibly valuable section. All of this will be videotaped or videoed and then posted within about an hour after the presentation, so you can go back to it and also share this to others. In addition, there's documents and resources that usually come along with each one of the presentations and the sessions as well. I also want to just bring to everyone's attention other resources within the state and the community. The SBDCs that we have partnered with, Small Business Development Councils, all the work that is going on throughout the state on that is fantastic. Our workforce group, Arizona at Work, really, really valuable and has made such great progress over the last several months. And I also want to call to attention a phenomenal program, which is called our MEP, our Manufacturing Extension Program. We have just been really, really busy with so many wonderful manufacturing teams and assisting them to grow in the state. I also want to call to attention Arizona Together. Again, just such a valuable resource for all information and resources regarding COVID and other activities. So please do check that out as well. I want to give a plug, and this will give you an idea of new sessions. Yes, that is correct. Our session number 99 and number 100 are coming up in next week, which is fantastic. And what we've decided to do is focus some of our digital activities like eBay for holiday sales, and then also how industry leaders are overcoming COVID. And this is a session we're gonna try to bring industry leaders together to discuss what are some of the best practices and things that have been going well and how they have gotten there. And we're gonna be working with the Superstition Meadery for that. So that's gonna be kind of cool. All right, well, let's focus in. Oh yeah, I was gonna tell you as well, I just wanna read this. We have had nearly 7,000, actually with today, we have well over 150 people participating today, or closer to 200 actually. We will be over 7,000 participants since we started this in April. We're really proud of that, and we want to continue to do that as well. So we'll definitely sign up to do that. So let's move on to the topic at hand, which is giving resources for our restaurants and how they can move tables outside and get outdoor seating. We've got a wonderful expert panel, Dan Bogarts from the Arizona Restaurant Association. Brian Hare from the Maricopa County, giving kind of a health view of this and how that process has to work. Also, Roxana Patonis from the League, which is also going to help us through some of the process. And then Christine from the city of Mesa. And we've got some really great examples about how Mesa has already done this. And what we want the audience to be thinking through is obviously what the process is, how we're trying to streamline that. But also many of our attendees today are from other cities and towns throughout the state. We encourage you to reach out to these team members, reach out to us. We want to connect the dots on how to make this very, very easy for restaurants to move forward. So without further ado, I am going to now hand this over to Dan Bogarts from the Arizona Restaurant Association, who will start a short presentation, and then we'll move through each of the organizations that are represented here. And we're going to try to leave a lot of time for Q&A. So go ahead and post your questions if you could. I think what we like to do is see them on the Q&A section. We'll be monitoring that, and we'll hopefully have plenty of time for that. So let me stop sharing here, and Dan, you can take over.
Oh, Andy, okay. So you want me to share?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That would be Lisa. Apologize. Lisa, if you could.
Throwing me a curveball already.
Yeah, I know. At least you could tell me if you can't share that. Okay, looks like you can. Perfect. You're on the, yeah, perfect. Okay, Dan, it's all yours. Thank you.
All right. Lisa, could you go back one slide, please? Oh, yeah. All right, perfect. So just as a reminder, everyone, my name is Dan Bogert. I'm with the Arizona Restaurant Association, and extension of premises has been a top priority for us for several months now, going all the way back to May. Arizona is in a little bit of a unique position in that for a large majority of our restaurants here, the summer months were not conducive to outdoor dining, whereas in a large swath of the rest of the country, we did see these programs being implemented and very successful. And Lisa, if you go to the next slide, please. So just real quick before I get into some of the things that restaurants should consider before going down this path of extension of premises, the city of Denver did a study from their extension of premises during their good weather months, which were the late summer, or sorry, summer going into early fall. And what they found was that through the extension of premises program, just allowing restaurants to extend their seating outside of their normal service area, that restaurants were able to bring in an extra $247 million just over that short summer and early fall period. And for any of the cities on there, for the city of Denver, that equated to about $24 million in extra tax revenue that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten. Now we use the term extra, but really this is recapturing revenue they would have gotten if indoor capacity was not reduced. And so we're looking at the same type of thing here in Arizona. And it's definitely, as we're in our nice season where it's pleasant to dine outside and we're seeing an influx of customers and we're starting to see those tourists and snowbirds return, this can become all the more important to the survival of the industry as we continue to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic. So on your screen, you'll see just a few things that we've identified that restaurateurs and operators should look at before starting this process. Specifically, what size of area will you need for your extension? A lot of things come to this. What type of additional staffing needs? Are you going to need to be able to bring people back? Are you going to start with a skeleton crew and see how things develop and then move up from there? Those are types of things you should think of before going down this, so you have the labor ready to go to respond to this extended area. Especially since a lot of the cities have worked very hard to make this process expedited. So we're seeing many of people getting their permits approved within a 7-day period. So it goes to even more importance of making sure this is pre-planned. Are you going to have any type of structures, tinting or some sort of other device to provide shade or shelter from rain? We've seen several restaurants who've expanded without any type of shelter. We've had great weather, great open air opportunities for people to dine, but we've also seen a lot of people take advantage of the tenting opportunity as well. One big, huge consideration here, if you're planning on serving alcohol, you're going to need to have some sort of temporary barriers. Now, the Department of Liquor License Control and the cities have been very flexible on this, on what type of barriers, but there still needs to be some, whether we're using stanchions or planters with flowers and other plants in them, or some type of fencing. What we've seen in other states, and you can kind of see one of the pictures there, I believe that's from Denver or another city back east, where they've basically just used a stanchion system. We've also seen people who put up planters and have just run ropes between them. That works as well. So the idea there is, what kind of barriers do you want to work with you that's going to go with your concept aesthetically and kind of create that environment that you want for folks. The other thing is, if you're planning on serving alcohol, you got to make sure that your area is contiguous. And I know the cities are going to talk about this a little bit more, so I won't get too much into that. But sometimes restaurants run into a little bit of an issue here on whether they have to skip over a sidewalk if they're expanding into their parking lot, etc. I think the point here is to take a look at the space and see if there's a way to do it. Can we move the rights of way around? Can we come up with some control points, etc.? The point here is just make sure we're analyzing that before putting in your application. So the last thing you want is that to get kicked back to you on the liquor side, and then you got to go back through the planning process. And then the other big one I wanted to touch base with you on is, of course, making sure you're checking in with your landlord. First of all, make sure that you have permission to expand into any space that isn't included in your lease. Most of the landlords we've been working with have been very cooperative in this. Some of them even have set up resources for their restaurateurs to use. So that's another thing you should definitely check into is, does your landlord have any resources available for you? Perhaps a site plan designer to help you come up with the sketches. Perhaps they have some materials like pre-positioned barriers for you to use, etc. It's always worth inquiring about those. And then, of course, are you planning on doing any type of food preparation? If so, that's when you're going to want to go ahead and check in with your county health department. But these are the general things we think that restaurants should come up with a plan of before they start the application process. That way, the application process goes very smooth, and we can get that set up very quickly. And in the interest of time, that's all I've got, Andy. So we'll kick it over to who's ever next.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Dan. And I also wanted to mention, while Roxana is starting up, we intend to focus on this issue for the next couple of weeks, and we're looking to continue another presentation on this as well. So just stay tuned for that as well. Roxana?
Good morning, everyone. Again, Roxana Patones with the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. The League represents the 91 incorporated cities and towns in Arizona. And we recognize the importance of restaurants and local business, not only for what they bring to the local economy, but also for the character and sense of community they bring to the area. They're also a driver for tourism. So we want to be as helpful as we can be. As Dan mentioned, during the past several months, the League, along with other stakeholders, have been in conversations about how cities and towns can help local businesses in the community thrive, and to make that process to extend into outdoor spaces as flexible as possible and as easy to navigate as possible. Lisa, if we could go to the next slide. So as we moved into late summer, early fall, a number of municipalities started implementing streamlined processes to help restaurants expand dining into outdoor spaces if they weren't doing that already. So in addition to creating these expedited processes, cities have also made other efforts, such as creating one-stop shops within their cities, so that you as the operator could meet with a team of your planning and zoning, as well as your fire department, to make sure that you have a point of contact to know kind of where to start in the application process and what you should be doing. Cities have also created designated web pages within their websites where business owners that are seeking an extension of premise can clearly see the steps that they need to take as they go through this process. And additionally, some cities have also waived fees that are normally associated with special use permits, or even the city portion of reviewing the extension of premise license for that liquor application. So cities are trying to be as flexible and as helpful as they can be. So in this presentation, I will go through a brief overview of the steps that are common throughout applications that we've seen. Please note that the process varies depending on cities or depending on the city or town, but generally these are some of the steps that operators can expect to see as they go through this application process to extend their premise. Like Dan mentioned, getting authorization from your landlord, first and foremost, confirming plans for extension with the building owner is important. Some cities might require or request a letter of authorization that's signed by the building owner before moving forward with some of the other steps. Operators can also expect to have some sort of application process within the city. Like I mentioned, some cities have created a one-stop shop approach, like the city of Tempe, for example, has done that. But in other cities, this application is probably being reviewed by your zoning departments or your planning departments or economic development divisions within the city. These applications, it's common for them to ask the operator to provide some sort of site plan or diagram labeling roads and access, ADA access, as well as where you are planning on placing tables and chair and seating. So some of them might require an aerial photo that you can download off of Google just to show kind of where you are planning on making that expansion. Dan touched on this a little bit, but if you are an establishment that's currently serving liquor and you plan on doing that in that extended premise, you would have to go through the application process at the Department of Liquor License Control. The city's role in this process is to make a recommendation to the state on whether that footprint should be enlarged. And generally in the past, I think some cities have made those recommendations via council. So the council would have to make that recommendation in a formal meeting. A lot of them have changed this process to make it so that city staff can make that recommendation and as a way to expedite that process for the operator. As Dan mentioned, the Department of Liquor has made a commitment to be flexible with operators, and cities are doing their best to turn these applications around quickly. Additionally, moving on to insurance coverage requirements. Some cities will require operators that are using part of a sidewalk or a right-of-way to name the city or town as an additionally insured entity on the restaurant's insurance policy. We found that generally the coverage requirements that cities might be asking for are already typical of a restaurant's insurance policy. But if you have any questions or you're not sure, city staff, city officials have expressed a willingness to work with operators to review their policies and confirm that the city's requirements are being met if you're not able to confirm that yourself. Lastly, as part of the review process for an application that are ultimately submitted to the city or town may require some sort of final inspection to ensure that fire code is met and that the establishment is being compliant with ADA requirements. So there might be some sort of site walk for that. Additionally, a lot of these temporary permits are tied to some sort of emergency declaration that's been declared within the municipality. So by nature, these permits are temporary and they're intended to provide that additional square footage so that businesses can maintain those social distancing guidelines. But like I said, the steps will vary slightly depending on the city or town, but these have been generally the common themes we've seen in applications. And before I close, I do want to share a link, and I'll go ahead and share it on the chat. But the League of Arizona Cities and Towns has worked with cities to compile a list on our website that I've linked that again will outline the process that I've discussed here, but also has a list of those cities that have a streamlined process in place. We have close to about 20 cities on our website that will have direct links to web pages within cities' websites that will direct operators to the steps that they need to take. If your city or town is not listed on here, we recommend you to reach out to your economic development department or your zoning and planning division within the city. The league also has a directory online that you can search for. City officials are eager to help facilitate this process for businesses looking to stay afloat at this time. And generally, all cities will have some sort of process in place for a temporary use permit. So like I said, we're willing and able and happy to help where we can. A number of cities have undergone these streamlined processes to help restaurants during this time. And we look forward to seeing more businesses thriving during the time. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to our next speaker, Andy.
We're going to go ahead and wait for questions. Thank you, Roxana. That is excellent. We do have a few questions in our Q&A that we'll address live, but great information. Appreciate that. Christine, you're up. Thank you. You might be on mute, Christine.
Sorry, we're having a little bit of a glitchy connection today, so my apologies in advance. I'm Christine Zalanka, the Development Services Director for the City of Mesa, and I'd also like to introduce Heather Amta, who is our one point of contact. Heather is our small business assistant, and she is the person that's single-handedly and very personally helping all of our restaurants in the city. Just a little bit of background. This issue first came up back in May, came to me through our intergovs, basically through the Restaurant Association and the League, asking for us to think about how we could help restaurants with the safety and health requirements, social distancing, and the effect that that was having on their bottom line. So we chatted about it briefly. We did not make this a huge bureaucratic process. We did not actually try to go in and change codes because that takes months. What we did, we had a resolution that authorized the city manager or their designee to modify any codes on a temporary basis based on the emergency declarations from both the state and our mayor, that as we needed to, we could essentially make things happen. So it was very broad by intention. We made no attempt to go through and try to figure the full extent of what codes might be involved. But the intent was certainly that we could allow restaurants in particular very quickly to come in, expand their premises, and also include signage. And that signage was certainly one of the first things that we essentially said, put as many signs out there in as many spots as you need to let people know that you've got grab and go, that you've got curbside service, that you've got sit down dining. So we did that actually probably from March 20th on, but this resolution really gave sort of more legal authorization to staff in the city manager's office to modify those codes. What we did was we came up with a very simple process, and Heather basically put that together. There is a site plan required, but Heather has worked with individual restaurants and, drawing it out. It doesn't have to be done by an architect or an engineer. It can be very simple. Heather actually will go out, and the nice thing about our department, Development Services, we coordinate and collaborate with all other departments in the city, including fire, including the police department, engineering, transportation. So we have the ability to help individual restaurant owners figure out what works on their site, because obviously every site is a little bit different. If there's a sidewalk involved, if there's shared resources with an adjacent business owner that they maybe want to expand into, and we've actually had that, and restaurants have expanded their outdoor seating in front of other businesses that they worked collaboratively with. In some cases, you might have parking lots. We very intentionally said if a restaurant wants to take a few parking spots out of their parking lot for extended dining, that's fine. The city doesn't need to get involved in counting the number of parking spaces. What we are mostly concerned about is public safety, obviously. We want to make sure that we are not restricting public safety access. We want to make sure we can get emergency vehicles in there, that people are not gathering or sitting in areas that could be risky. So that's really one of the main things that Heather works on. And she works on that with our fire prevention department. They actually go out, they look at what the setup looks like, they look at what the perimeter barriers are. And it was mentioned earlier that there's a tremendous amount of flexibility on what those barriers and fencing looks like. We're very open, non-specific on that. Heather has learned how to coordinate with Maricopa County Health Services and Liquor Control, because certainly those two areas are outside of what the city can do, but she has direct contacts with those organizations to help facilitate restaurants to quickly expand. I am going to blow our horn a little bit. I think Roxana talked about 7 days. We typically get the permits out within 2 to 4 days of the time that somebody contacts Heather, and she really jumps on it and makes this happen. To date, we have 22 approved expansion. We have I think probably 6 or 7 that are now pending that have come in. When we first did this emergency resolution authorizing modification of codes, it was back in May. The resolution took effect June 1st. Obviously, that was exactly the wrong time of year in Arizona. So it was kind of a slow start, but we rebranded the program a couple of months ago. We're calling it the Mesa Alfresco program. One of the really great things, we were authorized to use $1,000 per premises of CARES funding. And it can be used for restaurants to actually purchase assets. So things like umbrellas, tables, chairs, fencing, that money has to be used, as we all know, by the end of the year. So that's kind of rapidly coming to a close. But so far, Heather, we started this just maybe a month ago, right, where we were authorized to disperse the $1,000 per premises. Again, we've made that a pretty simple process. So far, we've dispersed about $6,000 and are really trying to reach out to our restaurants in the city to say, you know, if you can take advantage of this money, there is money available, but you need to do it quickly. So that's just it in kind of a nutshell. We circumvented bureaucracy, which is what my department loves to do. Try to be very nimble, very flexible, work directly with the restaurants and help them to the maximum extent possible so that they can continue to maintain. We don't know when this might end at this point in time. Our resolution is tied to the emergency declarations. Not to make any projections, but I don't anticipate that this program is going to go away anytime in the near future. So we're ready to continue to work with our restaurant customers in the city of Mesa, and we can move things forward very, very quickly. Certainly better than 7 days.
Thank you so much, Christine. That's awesome information. And I know we're going to come back during the Q&A process where we can poke into a little bit of the process that you guys have gone through, but great job and terrific presentation for us today. Excellent. Next up, I believe we have Brian here, and he's going to give us the Maricopa County health view of this and where they would need to come in, at least from a county perspective in Maricopa. And then we hope also that our participants today in other counties and other townships can take this on as well, and we can answer questions as we go forward with that. So Brian?
All right, thanks, Andy. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm going to discuss the extension of premises for food establishments in Maricopa County. And there's 2 separate sections I'll cover, incorporated areas and unincorporated areas. We'll start with the incorporated areas. Could you move to the next slide, please? So again, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the county continues to provide relief options for our customers. And again, this will be in effect until the public health emergency is declared by our public health department. And I'll talk first about incorporated areas such as a city or a town. The main county department that's going to be involved is environmental services. And we're only going to get involved for extension of premises if you're doing food preparation activities in the extended premise area. If you are just doing service from the kitchen to the extended area, sidewalk, or parking lot, there is nothing required from our department. If you are going to do any food preparation activities in those extended areas, we need to look at equipment schematics, have a layout. Our application is online. Everything can be uploaded online, including your layout and equipment schematics. The process for this is going to be less than a week. We're looking at probably from 2 to 4 days as well. There is no fee involved with this process if you go through it. And then we do communicate with other county departments as needed. So as you'll see on the next slide, we actually have some other departments that may be involved with extension of premise. The website to apply is listed there on the screen, and we'll get that out to the members as well in the chat. Next slide, please. So for unincorporated areas, and this is generally referred to as a county island, where there is no city or town involved. The main county departments that are going to be involved are Planning and Development and our Maricopa County Department of Transportation, MCDOT. There are some submittal requirements. There is an as-built plan of development application that's required, a narrative, an aerial or site plan that has to identify the temporary extension area. It should demonstrate how safe pedestrian and vehicular access will be maintained. And it should also address how the expanded dining area will not impact ADA facilities or public right-of-ways. And I'll just mention briefly on this, the public right-of-ways that really lies with our Maricopa County Department of Transportation. And so they have some requirements for that. There may be some fees involved with that if there's things that involve the right-of-way. But again, we'll handle those on a case-by-case basis. We also have to be able to maintain adequate parking and ensure that we'll not block fire lanes, loading zones, and site visibility triangles. Some of the things that we have mentioned before. So the process for this review is it's an expedited review process. It's going to take approximately a week. There are no fees with this. And then again, permission from the local fire jurisdiction will be required. Keep in mind on the unincorporated areas on these county islands, there can be up to 25 different fire authorities out there, which is why we have this in this section here. So just keep that in mind. And then building permits are only required for extension of electrical or construction of permanent structures that are going to be occurring. And again, in discussion with the Restaurant Association and some of the others on the panel, we don't see a lot of these, we don't predict there'll be a lot of these in unincorporated areas of Maricopa County. That's all I have.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Brian, and all of our panelists. Let's move quickly into Q&A. Excellent. We have about 25 minutes. First of all, just let me check. Is my sound okay? Maybe one of the panelists can make sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's just start at the top. Any indication for financial assistance from the state? This is a question from Steve. Let me start with that and anyone else can jump in. There is, we continue to do that with, just throughout this whole process, looking at opportunities. The cities, townships, the counties are all looking for opportunities to have that process in place where you can waive fees and other programs. In addition, there is a new grant program that has launched. It is running through your local chambers. Chambers can apply for this grant. One of the areas identified in the chamber's grants is to allow for some financial assistance for this. So while that will be in the direction of the chambers, please do contact your chambers on that process. That could be another area that we go forward. But I want to leave this question as well and ask if anyone else has anything to add to that. Okay. Great. The next one, my panelists can see these questions. So if you do see one that you'd like to take on, please go ahead and do so. The next one was for temporary extensions due to emergency executive orders. Is there any assistance under the emergency executive orders to alleviate closing sidewalks, operating sidewalks, et cetera? This was from Yuma County. They want to operate like California and Colorado in this regard, where both states have extended the provided excellent results. I think we covered that a little bit during a lot of the presentations for sure. Maybe Christine and Heather can grab that if you'd like, see what Mesa is doing, and maybe even from the Maricopa County side.
I can start that and Heather jump in. That was actually one of the things we had anticipated would come up early on when we were putting this program together. And we really do deal with it on a case-by-case basis. We had one extension of premises downtown. That initial review of it looked like it was maybe going to be a bit of a problem because of a drive aisle, and Heather was able to work with the adjacent restaurants and that particular restaurant to allow that that patio expansion. So we really do work with it on a case-by-case basis. Again, several people have said making sure that we have ADA access and that we have adequate public safety access. But beyond that, our anticipation is that as long as the landlord approves it, if there's no pushback from adjacent or shared tenants in say a strip mall or something, that we've been able to work that out without any problems. But again, it's done on a case-by-case basis, depending on what each restaurant wants to do.
Yes.
Great, perfect.
And like Christine said, we did do a resolution to help lift these zoning ordinances, temporarily. So it really has surprised people where they can actually dine now, retention basins and greenscapes that, were off limits are now being used for diners. So it's really helped a lot of businesses just be creative in how they can still serve, this near maximum capacity, we tell them we're not giving you extra occupancy, we're redistributing it. And it's really worked very well for a lot of people.
Great. A little bit of an add-on to that question might be from, I think it's Shasandra. Are restrictions for table space, are there restrictions for table spacing outdoors? I think I know the answer to that question, but I want to make sure we get that question answered.
Yeah, Andy, I can take that one. The same rules are going to apply to your extended premises that apply to your patio. So you're still going to have the social distancing, the 6 foot between folks. So all of those rules are still going to apply. The only rule that doesn't apply is the occupancy limitation, because that only applies to indoor spaces. So if you already have an outdoor patio, it's the same rules that'll apply to your extended premises. So the only complication with that is if you were thinking of doing a fully enclosed tent where the tents have siding on them as well, then you will run into that occupancy limitation as well. But other than that, it's the exact same rules that would apply to a permanent patio are going to apply to the temporary premises. And Andy, if I could just address the previous question as well while I'm going, as far as resources on the rights of way and being able to go in there. I think one of the great things about the Restaurant Association working with the League of Arizona Cities and Towns is they created this great website. Because we have 91 different cities and 15 different counties, it's hard for us to cover every single thing on this webinar. So I suggest any operators out there that have questions about what resources are available to them is go to that league website and find your city. And most of them have websites that are up that will list any type of resources that are coming along with these programs. And if not, always feel free to reach out to us as well, and we can help facilitate that.
Terrific, Dan. I just posted that site for everyone on the chat. Please do go to that. I didn't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Andy, just to add to what Dan was saying, if your city or town isn't listed on that website, feel free to scroll down to the League's directory where we list planning, zoning, divisions, and contacts for every city.
Perfect. And Cassandra, your question, does the city of Scottsdale have an expedited process? That would be a thing that you could probably go for that as well. But I want to ask the group here, do they have any insights? Dan, do you have insight on Scottsdale?
Yeah, Scottsdale's doing a parklet program. So I do know that they have a program set up. Since it's not something that's quite as similar as just expediting extension of premises, I don't want to necessarily use the term expedited process, but I do understand it's very quick.
Thank you very much. Great for that. We'll continue to go forward. Again, panelists, if you do see a question that is a target for you, please jump on it. We've got a bunch of them in here. This was from Melanie. This program is available for all of Arizona, correct? We are in rural Southeast Arizona. The goal here is to coalesce a statewide initiative on this, Melanie. And yes, we would like that to extend into all regions, every rural community, every township, and so forth. So again, what we've tried to do is show some examples with the city of Mesa, and these are examples, and the example of the county of Maricopa, but we want to extend that, and we're going to be working very closely with all the counties and townships to extend this out statewide. We think it's a super important program, so hopefully that answers it. Any additions to that, team?
No, our goal is to get everyone to participate in this program.
And just a note to that again, in order to do that, we are going to have subsequent conversations on this in this forum as well. We'll continue to update the resources that are identified that we've talked about as well.
Andy, I have a question here from an individual about challenges the county has faced with the extended premises, and we haven't come across any challenges at this point. It's pretty new for us. We've just released it probably a couple weeks ago, so we haven't had a lot of requests come in, so no challenges at this point.
Yeah, one question I have, and maybe this has already been answered, but I just, as I listen to this, I'm sure that this question comes up. If we were to pick one starting point, I'm a restaurant owner, where do I first want to go? What was that first point of contact?
Andy, I'll take that one. Honestly, I think your very first point of contact on this is your landlord if you're in a lease space, because none of this works if we don't have that initial permission from the landlord. And then, like I was talking about before, a lot of landlords out there that we've been working with actually have resources for their tenants because they've participated in our stakeholder meetings on this. They want to see this extension happen. So I would say that the first point of contact is your landlord to say, hey, is this something that you're cool with? And you have any resources to help me out? And that might make the rest of the process way easier on you.
Perfect, Dan. Thank you for that. And then could I just extend that one more step? Okay, I've got the landlord on board. Now what?
Yeah, I think the next step after that is go back to that list of things to consider that we talked about at the beginning of this, and make sure you have some sort of plan put into place. The thing that restaurateurs should remember is when you get this extension of premises, it's great because you have this extra ability to seek customers and bring in additional revenue, but you're now responsible for that area. And so we want to make sure that you have you're going to be able to take care of that area, you have the right staffing, et cetera. But we don't want to see anybody get in any type of liability situation. So I would definitely go back to that list. But the next point of contact for sure would be your city or your county if you're in unincorporated areas, and look at their websites, review their processes. And most of the cities we've worked with have been great, and they have points of contact specifically for this program. And so reach out to them and see if there's any intricacies that you're not necessarily understanding from the process listed on their website. So that would be the order I would go in.
Terrific. And let me take another question. This was from Johnny. Well, thank you for that question. What is being done to advocate to the governor's office to see if the temporary extensions of premises can be non-contiguous? What I want to say is, first of all, the governor's office has been the catalyst of these activities, along with the Arizona Restaurant Association, along with the league, our counties, our cities, and with the Arizona Commerce Authority. So right now, what you're seeing is an example of all of the resources that we can possibly muster throughout the state are going after this. So in terms of the specific advocation of the temporary extension of premises to be non-contiguous, does anyone have a point on that? And if we don't, we can also follow up. I'm ready.
Yeah, Andy, this is something that we've been talking about with all the stakeholders, including the governor's office, really back at the beginning of summer in the May timeframe. We have to be a little bit cognizant here because the contiguous requirement is listed in statute. And we've had some court orders that have come down talking about the governor's ability to play in that area. But that being said, what we're seeing is some innovative ideas that have been come up to kind of get around that, but do it in a correct way. And so we've seen a lot of cities that have utilized these parklet programs, or they're going around and they're creating a permanent extension. It's called a permanent extension, but if the operator decides they don't want to do it in 6 months, there's nothing that says you have to keep it going. And those types of ideas allow for a non-contiguous expansion. It's just not as cut and dry as the temporary extension. So there's ways around this that we're working with. but nothing that would just allow for the blanket non-contiguous expansion.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think that covers Johnny's question, and we'll continue to work very hard on that. I appreciate that, Dan. Okay, we're going to keep moving along here as quickly as we can to answer these. Let's just see Rodney's question very quickly. DLLC closed sidewalks, which nurtured the local rule to expand into the parking lots, cutouts, and streetscapes dining. Anybody want to tackle that one? It kind of sounds like we have, but go ahead, Roxana.
Andy, I think this is going back to Dan's point about if you have a non-contiguous area, it can't be temporary. So it unfortunately, because the statute is written in that way, that a temporary extension can't be contiguous, or rather, if you don't have that contiguous area, it can't be a temporary extension. So I think it goes back to that issue and that kind of issue to kind of work through, hopefully down the line.
Perfect. Thank you, Roxana. Edward is asking a similar question. I just want to double down on our answer on that, which was, so if the same rules apply, do we have our clients then work with landlords first? I think the answer to that from Dan's perspective was, yeah, first stop, get with the landlord, then start that process as we move forward, the checklist that Dan's provided and the rest of the team have provided. Does anyone want to add to that at all? I think we've covered that one. Perfect. Specific question for City of Mesa for $1,000 patio reimbursement. Can a business just open up this year and apply? Could you guys give us an answer on that one?
Yeah, we don't have any restrictions on when a business opened, as long as they're an active business and a restaurant in Mesa. My recommendation is give Heather a call and get the process started.
Good, thank you. I want to answer CS Young's question again. Super important to reiterate this. Social distancing is required. The same regulations, same rules of social distancing would be applied outdoors as you're doing your indoor seating and extensions. And be cognizant of what Dan had said. I think there was it's more than a nuance. If you cover it up with plastic siding and tents with walls, that may end up being moving into an indoor requirement as well. So just extend your same guidelines is kind of the key in that. Anybody else see any good questions they'd like to jump on? Please go ahead. I'm going to look through these very quickly. Again, someone asked this question, will the slides and so forth be available? Yes, Lisa, if you could publish that again. This will be on our resource collective and it'll also be available on other sites as well. So this video will be on the ACA site. We'll post that and other links that the team has provided will all be collected there as well.
Andy, there was one I wanted to address on the, could this program be applied to gyms and fitness centers? And that was actually a question that was raised as part of an article at AZ Central. Honestly, I think if there is a gym that wanted to do something, just give us a call, because I think there's probably fewer restrictions for having fitness classes held outside than there would be for restaurants. So it seems to me that would be relatively easy to do, as long as, you know, for folks, again, weren't in a dangerous situation in the right of way or impeding traffic or something.
Yeah, I think that's a super good point. So as we were creating this informational seminar for restaurants, we had all discussed that there could be applicable areas where small retail businesses and other businesses can apply the same concept to extend out. While we're not specifically addressing it today, that possibility is there and we'd like to explore that. And if you do have questions around that, we're happy to engage in that after this as well. Thank you. There's a question on insurance. Any issues so far with insurance requirements? I think you might have answered that one, but let's, and that might be for the city of Mesa.
Yeah, we just require the certificate of insurance if they're in the right of way. in the city of Mesa right away. Other than that, you know, the land, that would be between the landlord and the tenant if they required additional insurance.
Okay, thank you.
There's another one real quickly here.
Sure.
What are the rules for hotel breakfasts? And I think we actually dealt with that one, Heather, on one of our restaurant or one of our hotels early on. It would really be the same thing. If a hotel wanted to extend their in-house restaurant facilities outside, it would be exactly the same program. I don't see that there's any difference in it.
We did the same thing for a mall. There was a kind of an anchor restaurant that needed to expand, and so they expanded into the mall. So we did an expansion like that. So it wasn't necessarily outside, but outside of their space.
Okay, great. And then, yeah, just I want to maybe ask this or state it, but I'm assuming that the rules for hotel breakfast, again, as you're extending out, you just take the same guidelines and move those outside and you'll probably be in pretty good shape. I see Brian nodding there, and that's kind of what I wanted to see, and Dan nodding. So good, I'm getting it. I appreciate that. Perfect. Connor wanted us to speak more about barriers needed for the extensions of premises, their height requirements, any specifics that you guys could help out with. And I know, again, this could be having some local jurisdictions, but in general, could you guys comment on that as well?
I think what we found is specificity as to what those barriers are. If there's a liquor license involved, it seems that the state liquor board is, they need to make sure that they're okay with it. We can be very flexible as to what those barriers look like. And it's my understanding that state liquor board has been also very flexible compared to what the regular rulings are for such facilities.
Yeah, Andy, I'll expand on that a little bit. We have seen a lot of flexibility here. The key with the barriers for liquor license purposes is it needs to create a clearly distinguishable and controllable area. Now that seems a little wide. It's honestly going to be a case-by-case basis. For instance, if you're expanding and your expansion is going to buttress an active road, they're likely going to want to see a little bit of a more intense barrier up against that road, versus if you're buttressing a courtyard, the stanchions are probably going to work in that situation, or even some of the planters with ropes run in between them. But to Christine's point, there's not a specific set of dimensions that you have to meet. It's really more about responding to the scenario. The point there is you want to be able to make sure that your employees are able to see and control folks who may try to leave the premises with an alcoholic beverage. That's the control point. And two, people from entering that facility without going through the proper entrance. That's going to be the key. And then also the public safety standpoint, like I was talking about before, if you're buttressing a road, you're going to want to see, they're going to want to see a little bit more of an intense barrier system.
Excellent. And I think Brian also covered the notion of the concept of where the county transportation might have to look at certain scenarios as well. Situational analysis on that, situational interpretations, and you're going to have to just continue to have things checked through on that, but hopefully we can expedite that through quickly. Great. I think Daniel's question on the partially enclosed, we've answered that. I think I just want to reiterate, if it's partially closed and extensions, you just kind of use the same guidelines. But if you do all the way close it, you're looking at the indoor requirement. And Dan, if I understood that correctly, what is not going to be extended out on those guidelines would be the 50% concept as opposed to the distancing. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So, and the goal here, when we're talking about the occupancy limitation, we're talking about, as a general rule, we refer to as indoor. But really, I think that the public health purpose of it is if you are in an area that has access to moving and circulating outdoor air. So that would be a patio. So there's a lot of restaurant patios that you'll have roofs over them and have two sides on it, but it's still open to the air. It's still qualified as a patio. That's the same thing that we would be looking for the extension. So even let's say that that you put up a side on one side of your tent to maybe block the sun from coming in the morning, a certain section, that's not going to all of a sudden trigger you into that occupancy. You've got to have a fully enclosed. You basically need to take away that circulation of the outside air with all four walls. So the point of the extending into the premises is we're creating this circulating air with the outside air, and that's really what public health wants to see as far as decreasing the risk for transmission. So that's what it comes down to. I'm not going to get into this hard and fast rule on when someone's going to be triggered into the 50% requirement, et cetera. But in general, that's what everyone's going to be looking for is that air circulation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dan. We are right now about 1 minute to close. So I just would like to wrap up by saying thank you so much, first and foremost, to the governor's office, also to the league and Dan at the Arizona Restaurant Association, Christine, also Heather from the city of Mesa, Brian, thank you so much from Maricopa County. Everyone that's kind of come together on this is what are the wonderful examples that we have seen so many times over the last several months of how the states come together on issues like this and trying to help. So reach out to these groups, reach out to us and me personally, if you needed to. We're gonna work very, very hard on your behalf to figure out ways to expedite and speed up the processes and deal with these questions and get things moving in this direction. We think this is super important. Extending also other businesses, great ideas. I love it. I think it'd be so great to see a lot more of this activity. Close on a last, very, very quick. There was a question from Don. I'm not going to ignore it. The city of Denver has just announced a shutdown on dining rooms. Do we expect other cities to follow? I'm not seeing any of that yet. I don't want to even venture to weigh into that. That has been something that the state and the cities have really linked up on, and we'll leave that for the governor's office and the cities and mayors to look for. We're here to support all of those activities and make sure that there's a wonderful business environment for all of you to continue to thrive and grow as much as possible. We really do appreciate everyone's attendance. This has been a fantastic group, a great turnout. We've published again, the Resource Collective boot camp site where you'll see this video as well as the resources that are on there. We will then, after this, collect all of the links, all of the presentation information, link it to that as well, so you have that. And also, please go forward with a lot of the information that's been provided to the participants from all of these great speakers as well. And I see Rodney Short just put us with the city of Yuma, so we'll publish that out as well. Thank you again so much. We appreciate it. And to all of our panelists and partners on this, couldn't do it without you, so we really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Appreciate it, everyone.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.